Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. The Bigger Picture, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome to The Bigger Picture. Now, 2024 was a roller coaster for global financial markets, and rising living costs, inflation, and the increasing retirement age are putting additional pressure on us Singaporeans planning for our future. So as we step into 2025, what can we expect for the markets, the economy, and what diversification strategies should you leverage this year? Joining us today is Hugh Chung, Chief Investment Officer from Endowus, a leading digital wealth management platform. To tell us more, Hugh, welcome to Money FM. Thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Good morning, Audrey. Thank you for having me on the show.
Great to have you on, Hugh. So let's start by reflecting on 2024. Quite a turbulent year for global markets, geopolitical tensions and policy shifts kind of shaping the landscape. So how do you think all that has happened, these events, how would it influence investor behavior and market sentiment as we enter 2025?
Yes, you rightly pointed out 2024 was a very turbulent market, but global equities as a whole have done very well, particularly led by the U.S. equity market. S&P 500 was up 25%, and it was largely led by, the U.S. large-cap tech companies. But it also had a lot of other sectors that helped it. For example, financial sector has also done very, very well. Utilities has also done well. And even outside of the U.S., there are markets like India and Taiwan that have done very well. So while it was volatile, it really paid to stay in the markets. And I really do think that 2025 will be a continuation, of that. I think if you look at the U.S. economy, it continues to be very resilient. The consensus growth of the GDP growth in the U.S. has moved from 1.3 to 2.7 in 2024. So it is proving to be a lot stronger than what people had expected, and largely because of productivity growth. So I would say looking into 2025, we want to continue to be invested. You want to be diversified, and we can go into this in a bit more detail later.
Yeah.
But also, lastly, we want to mind the risks. So we want to make sure that we are very, very aware of what the risks are in the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you talked about the resilience of U.S. markets and, minding the risks. Well, the U.S. seems to be charting a new course under a Trump administration alongside the Fed's move towards lowering interest rates. So what ripple effects could we see globally from this? How might these developments impact asset classes and investment strategies for us here in Singapore?
Yeah, so, after Trump got elected, we've already been seeing the impact on the markets. First of all, the U.S. dollar has become stronger, and this is largely on the back of concerns about inflation, with tariffs staying higher. This has also been reflected in the Treasury yield, right? So 10-year Treasury yield. So obviously the dollar has a very, very big impact, particularly for investors in other regions such as Asia. And so that has an impact. The second thing is that with higher yields, it also has an impact on, investments into bonds and other asset classes as well. I think, though, what the market has been telling you, and we can go into what the Fed, has done recently, but what the market has been telling you is largely going to be the continuation of what 2025 will be looking to do. I still don't think that takes away from the fact that you have to be, invested and you have to be diversified. And again, the economy itself is actually, very, very resilient. So there will be effects on the Asian markets in particular, but the big picture of, I think, staying in the markets is going to be the same.
Yeah, let's talk about diversifying our strategy. So, looking at this even closer to home, rising living costs and an aging population are significant challenges for Singaporeans. So what advice do you have for people looking to diversify their strategies, strengthen their personal financial or retirement plans in 2025?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The inflation, costs are really hitting home. It's, same for me as well, living in Singapore. Not just Singapore, most other places in the world are experiencing, rising living costs. And I think that's why it's more important to be aware that you have to, have an investment that beats inflation, right? And I think, inflation over a very long period of time has averaged between 2 to 2.5%. So your investments need to offset that. And I think one good example of that is our CPF investments. Our data suggests that in 2024, over 90% of investors that have invested through our platform in CPF have actually outperformed, the 2.5% guaranteed return on ordinary accounts. So, this has the same principle in real life in terms of, beating the inflation costs. As scary as it sometimes seems to be invested in the market, that's almost the only way to overcome, the cost of, higher cost of inflation.
Yeah. Well, Hugh, before you go, let's talk about the rise of wealth tech. Now, the sector has been gaining traction all across Asia. So what role do you see platforms like Endowus playing in helping people navigate these challenges and capitalize on opportunities in 2025?
I think the role that our platforms like ourselves play is really, first of all, in education. I think we want to make sure that people understand that investments are not just about returns. It's about being aware of risk and therefore thinking about the long-term goals that we have, looking back on how we make the appropriate investments for the risks. And I think the education part is very important. The second part is that we want to make sure we provide the same type of investments that institutional, are privy to, right? And I think that's really the best way to get access to the best quality product. The third thing is really on cost. I think in the past, and it's still now, the distribution of some of these investments have been very costly. And I think what we're trying to do is to make them much more accessible and cost efficient. And so those are the things that I think help our investors, again, being educated and also be invested in the markets in a very, very cost effective way.
Yeah, well, 2025 may present its fair share of challenges, but there are also exciting opportunities for those who plan wisely and stay informed. Thank you so much, Hugh, for sharing these valuable insights with us today. Really appreciate having you on.
Thank you for your time, Audrey.
Thank you, Hugh. That was Hugh Chung, Chief Investment Officer from Endowus. Keep it here on Money FM 89.3.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.